Something serious is happening inside the WNBA, and it's getting bigger by the day. Fans are furious, players are reacting, and now the spotlight is on officiating. At the center of it all, Caitlin Clark. After multiple controversial calls and growing frustration on the court, the conversation has reached a breaking point. People are asking tough questions. Is the officiating fair? Is the league handling it properly? And why does it feel like the situation is escalating instead of improving? Now, with pressure mounting, even leadership is being forced to respond. And what's happening behind the scenes could change everything. So, what exactly triggered this? Is the league really being forced to act? Let's break it all down. The tension didn't start overnight. It built, game after game, moment after moment. And slowly, fans began to notice a pattern. It wasn't just one bad call. It wasn't just one questionable decision. It was repetition. Repeated moments where Caitlin Clark seemed to be at the center of controversial officiating. And when something repeats, it stops feeling random. It starts feeling like a problem. At first, people brushed it off. That's part of sports, right? Referees make mistakes. Calls don't always go your way. Every player deals with it. But then the clips started piling up. Missed calls, physical contact going uncalled, moments where fans felt the whistle was inconsistent. And that's when the conversation started growing. Because in today's world, nothing stays contained. Every play is recorded. Every moment is replayed. Every decision is analyzed in slow motion. And once that process begins, it spreads fast. Social media lit up, fans posting clips, comparing calls, breaking down plays frame by frame. And the common theme? Frustration, not just with one game, but with the overall consistency of officiating. Meanwhile, analysts began picking it up, talking about it on shows, debating whether the calls were fair, asking if something needed to change. And suddenly, this wasn't just a fan conversation anymore, it was a league-wide discussion. Because when officiating becomes the story, that's when things get serious. Because the focus shifts away from the game itself and onto how the game is being controlled. And that's never where a league wants to be. But here's where Caitlin Clark became the center of everything. Because of her visibility, because of her impact, because every game she plays is watched more closely than most. Which means every call involving her gets more attention. And that attention amplifies everything. Every missed whistle feels bigger. Every controversial moment feels more intense. And that's exactly what started happening. But here's the key detail. Because this wasn't just about Clark, it was about what her situation represented. A larger concern. A concern about consistency, about fairness, about whether the game is being officiated at the level fans expect. And once that concern takes hold, it doesn't fade easily. It grows. Because more people start paying attention, looking for patterns, questioning decisions. And that's exactly what led to this moment, where the pressure is no longer just coming from fans, but from everywhere. Media, players, the broader basketball community, all asking the same thing. What's going on? And more importantly, what is being done about it? Because when a league reaches this level of attention, accountability becomes unavoidable. You can't ignore the conversation, you can't dismiss the concerns. You have to respond. And that's where things start to shift, because once leadership is forced into the conversation, the stakes get higher, much higher, because now it's not just about individual games, it's about the integrity of the entire league. And that's what makes this moment so important, because it's not just about one player, or one call, or one game. It's about trust. Trust that the game is fair. Trust that the competition is balanced. Trust that every player is being treated equally under the same rules. And once that trust is questioned, everything changes. And that's exactly where we are right now. And at a point where the conversation is too loud to ignore, and the pressure is too strong to avoid. Because now, people aren't just watching the games, they're watching the decisions behind them. As the controversy continued to build, the situation reached a critical point. One where the WNBA could no longer stay quiet, because when fans, analysts, and even players begin questioning officiating at this level, it stops being a small issue. It becomes a league issue, and that's exactly what happened here. The spotlight shifted upward, toward leadership, toward the commissioner's office, because at the end of the day, that's where responsibility sits. Not with one referee, not with one game, but with the system as a whole. And once the system is questioned, everything changes. Because now it's not just about fixing a call, and it's about restoring trust. Meanwhile, the conversation around Caitlin Clark continued to grow. Every game she played became part of the narrative. Every whistle, or lack of one, was analyzed in real time. Fans weren't just watching anymore, they were studying, breaking down plays, comparing contact levels, looking for consistency. And when they didn't find it, the frustration grew even louder. But here's the key point. Because this situation isn't just about Clark herself, it's about what her visibility represents. She's one of the most watched players in the league, which means every moment involving her is magnified. And when something looks off in those moments, it doesn't stay small. It becomes a talking point, a headline, a debate that spreads across the entire basketball world. And that's exactly what forced the league into a response. Because ignoring it, not an option, not at this level of attention. So naturally, questions started being directed at leadership, about officiating standards, about referee accountability, about whether any internal changes were being considered. And that's where things became even more serious. Because once accountability enters the conversation, so does pressure. Pressure to explain, pressure to act, pressure to show that the integrity of the game is being protected. And that's a difficult position for any league, because officiating is never perfect. Mistakes happen, judgment calls vary. That's part of the game. But when mistakes start to look like patterns, that's when it becomes a problem. Because patterns suggest something deeper, something structural. No, and that's what fans were reacting to. Not just individual moments, but the feeling that something wasn't consistent. Meanwhile, analysts began adding more depth to the discussion, breaking down how games are officiated, explaining how different referees interpret contact, highlighting how pace, physicality, and positioning can influence calls. Because officiating isn't as simple as right or wrong, it's complex. But here's the issue. Complexity doesn't always translate well to perception. Fans don't see the full decision-making process. They see the outcome, the whistle, or the lack of it. And that outcome shapes their opinion instantly. So, when those outcomes feel inconsistent, the reaction is immediate and powerful. That's exactly what we're seeing here. A reaction driven by perception, but amplified by visibility. Mine because again, Caitlin Clark is at the center, and anything involving her carries more weight than usual. But here's where things get even more interesting. Because as the pressure builds, it doesn't just affect the league. It affects the referees themselves, because now they know they're being watched more closely. Every call scrutinized, every decision questioned, and that can change how games are officiated. More cautious whistles, more hesitation in certain moments, more awareness of how calls will be perceived. And that adds another layer of complexity, because now it's not just about making the right call, it's about managing the reaction to it, and that's not easy. Meanwhile, the narrative continues to evolve, from frustration to expectation, because now people aren't just asking what's wrong, they're asking what's next. Will the league address this directly? Will there be changes behind the scenes? Will consistency improve moving forward? These are the questions driving the conversation now, and they're not going away anytime soon. Because once trust is questioned, it has to be rebuilt. Through action, through consistency, through showing that the concerns are being taken seriously. And that's the stage we're entering now. A stage where the spotlight isn't just on the players, but on the system around them. Because at this level, every detail matters, every decision matters, and every response matters even more. By now, the conversation had reached a point where it was impossible to ignore. What started as frustration had turned into full-scale scrutiny, not just from fans, but from analysts, commentators, and people deeply connected to the game. And at the center of it all, Caitlin Clark. But again, this wasn't just about one player. It was about what her situation exposed. A larger concern about consistency in officiating across the WNBA. And once that concern becomes public, it creates a chain reaction, because now every game is viewed differently. Fans aren't just watching for highlights anymore. They're watching for calls, for missed calls, for patterns. And that shift in focus changes everything. Because when officiating becomes part of the entertainment, the game itself starts to take a back seat. And that's where things become dangerous for any league. Because the goal is always the same. Let the players decide the outcome, not the whistle. But when the whistle becomes part of the narrative, that balance is disrupted. And that's exactly what fans were reacting to. And meanwhile, players across the league began to feel it too. Not necessarily speaking out publicly, but adjusting their approach on the court. Because when officiating feels inconsistent, players adapt. They become more cautious in some situations, more aggressive in others. They test the boundaries of what's being called and what's being allowed. And that creates a different kind of game, one where uncertainty plays a role. Because if players don't know what will be called consistently, they can't fully control how they play. And that's a problem, not just for one team, but for the entire league. Because consistency is what creates fairness, and fairness is what builds trust. Without it, everything feels unpredictable. And unpredictability in this context isn't exciting, it's frustrating. But here's where things start to escalate even further. Because the conversation didn't stay contained within fan circles. It started reaching mainstream sports media, segments discussing officiating, panels debating specific calls, comparisons being made across different games. And once that happens, the pressure multiplies. Because now it's not just a community discussion, it's a public narrative, one that reflects directly on the league's reputation. And that's when leadership really starts to feel it, because public perception matters a lot, especially in a league that's growing rapidly, gaining new fans, expanding its reach, building momentum. Because momentum can be fragile, and narratives like this can influence how that momentum is perceived. But here's the key detail, because while the criticism is loud, it's not necessarily destructive. In fact, it can be constructive, because it highlights areas that need attention. It brings awareness to issues that might otherwise go unnoticed, and it creates an opportunity for improvement. But that opportunity only matters if it's addressed, if it's acknowledged, if action follows. And that's where the focus is now, not just on what happened, but on what will be done moving forward. Meanwhile, Caitlin Clark continues to play through all of this, through the noise, through the scrutiny, through the constant attention on every single possession she's involved in. And that's not easy, because while fans and analysts are debating, she's competing, making decisions in real time, adjusting to physical defense, adapting to how the game is being called, and still expected to perform at a high level. That's a different kind of pressure, one that goes beyond normal competition. Because now, every moment she's part of carries extra weight, extra attention, extra analysis. And that's what makes this situation unique. Because it's not just about officiating anymore, it's about how that officiating intersects with one of the most visible players in the league. And that intersection amplifies everything. But here's where it all comes together. Because at the end of the day, this situation forces one big question. What does the league do next? Does it stay the course? Does it adjust internally? Does it address the concerns publicly? Because doing nothing isn't really an option anymore. Not at this level of attention, not with this many eyes watching, and not with the conversation continuing to grow. And because once a narrative reaches this level, it demands a response. Not just in words, but in action. And that's exactly where this story is heading next. At this stage, the situation has moved beyond frustration and into expectation. Because once a conversation reaches this level, across fans, media, and the broader basketball world, it creates pressure that can't be ignored. And that pressure is now sitting directly on the shoulders of the WNBA. Because the question is no longer, is there an issue? It's, what is being done about it? And that's a completely different level of accountability. Because now, every decision, or lack of one, is being watched, analyzed, judged. Meanwhile, Caitlin Clark continues to be at the center of the storm, not by choice, but by visibility. Because when you're one of the most talked about players in the league, everything around you becomes magnified. Every call feels bigger, every missed whistle feels louder, every moment becomes part of a larger narrative. And that narrative is now influencing how fans experience the game itself. But here's where things take an even more serious turn, because the conversation has started shifting from frustration to demands. Fans aren't just pointing out issues anymore. They're calling for change, clear change, better consistency, more accountability, stronger standards for officiating. And when demands enter the conversation, the stakes rise significantly. Because now, it's not just about perception, it's about expectation. And expectations require action. But here's the challenge for any league in this position. Because officiating isn't something that can be fixed instantly. It's complex. It involves training, evaluation, internal systems that operate behind the scenes. And most of that isn't visible to the public, which creates a gap between what fans see and what the league is actually doing. And that gap, that's where frustration grows. Because without visibility, it can feel like nothing is happening, even if changes are being made internally. Meanwhile, the pressure continues to build, because every new game adds more fuel to the conversation. Every controversial moment gets added to the timeline. Every clip becomes another piece of evidence in the eyes of fans. And that accumulation creates momentum that's hard to slow down. But here's the key turning point. Because at some stage, pressure reaches a level where response becomes inevitable. Not optional, not delayed, inevitable. And that's where things are heading now. Toward a moment where the league has to step forward and address the situation in a clear, visible way. Because at this level, silence can be interpreted as avoidance. And that's the last thing any league wants, especially one that's growing as rapidly as the WNBA. But here's where things get even more interesting, because while the focus is on officiating, there's a bigger picture forming. A picture about growth, because increased attention always brings increased scrutiny. That's the trade-off. More fans means more opinions, more visibility means more analysis, more engagement means more criticism. And that's exactly what's happening right now. The league is growing, and with that growth comes moments like this. Moments where everything is under the microscope. But those moments aren't necessarily negative. They're part of the process. Because they force improvement, they highlight areas that need attention. They push the league to evolve. And that's what makes this situation important beyond just controversy. Because it's a test of how the league responds to pressure, how it manages public perception, how it maintains trust while continuing to grow. And that's not easy, but it's necessary. Meanwhile, players continue competing through all of this, adjusting, adapting, focusing on the game despite everything happening around them. And that includes Caitlin Clark. Because while the conversation surrounds her, she still has to perform, still has to make decisions in real time, still has to navigate a game that feels more scrutinized than ever. And that's a challenge few players experience at this level. But here's where everything connects. Because this moment isn't just about officiating, it's about trust. Trust between fans and the league. Trust between players and the system. Trust that the game is being managed fairly and consistently. And once that trust is questioned, rebuilding it becomes the priority, not just through words, but through action. And that's exactly where this story is heading next. At this point, everything is built up to one unavoidable reality. The league has to respond, not eventually, not quietly, but clearly. Because when pressure reaches this level, from fans, on media, and the broader basketball world, action becomes necessary. And that's exactly where the WNBA now finds itself, at a crossroads. Because this moment isn't just about officiating anymore, it's about credibility. And credibility is everything. It's what keeps fans invested, it's what keeps players confident in the system. It's what allows the game to grow without losing trust along the way. But here's the challenge. Because credibility isn't restored through statements alone. It's restored through consistency, through visible improvement, through showing, over time, that concerns are being taken seriously. And that's where things get complicated. Because change doesn't happen overnight, especially in something as complex as officiating. But perception, that changes instantly. And right now, perception is under pressure. Meanwhile, Caitlin Clark continues to be at the center of the conversation. Not because she controls the situation, but because her presence amplifies it. Every game she plays becomes part of the discussion. Every call becomes a talking point. Every moment adds to the narrative. And that level of visibility means one thing. There's no hiding from the issue. Everything is out in the open. And that forces accountability. Because when millions of people are watching, every decision matters more. But here's where things take an important turn. Because the conversation is no longer just about what's wrong, it's about what needs to happen next. Fans are asking for solutions, not just acknowledgement, not just explanations, solutions. Better consistency, clearer standards, more transparency in how officiating is handled. And that last point, transparency, is key. Because one of the biggest challenges in situations like this is the lack of visibility into how decisions are made behind the scenes. Fans see the outcome, but not the process. And without that process being visible, it's easy for frustration to grow. Because people fill in the gaps with assumptions, and those assumptions don't always reflect reality. That's why transparency matters. Because it builds understanding. It bridges the gap between perception and reality, and it helps restore trust. Meanwhile, the league is also dealing with something else: momentum. Because despite the controversy, the WNBA is growing rapidly. More attention, more viewership, more global interest than ever before. And moments like this, while challenging, are part of that growth. Because with more attention comes more scrutiny. That's the trade-off. But it's also the opportunity, an opportunity to improve, to refine systems, to strengthen the foundation of the league moving forward. And that's what makes this moment so important. Because it's not just about fixing a problem, it's about building something stronger. But here's the key detail, because how the league responds now will shape how it's perceived in the future. If the response is clear, consistent, and effective, this moment becomes a turning point for the better. A moment where the league addressed concerns and came out stronger. But if the response feels unclear, or delayed, or inconsistent, then the narrative could continue to grow in a negative direction. And that's the balance. That's the challenge. That's exactly where things stand right now. Meanwhile, players continue to compete through all of this, adapting to how games are being called, adjusting their play styles, finding ways to succeed despite the uncertainty. And that includes Caitlin Clark, because while the conversation surrounds her, she still has to perform, still has to lead, still has to navigate a game that feels more scrutinized than ever. And that's not easy. But it's part of the moment, a moment where everything is amplified, where every detail matters, where every decision, on and off the court, carries weight. But even with all of this, there's still one final piece left. Because beyond the pressure, beyond the expectations, beyond the need for response, there's one question that defines everything. What does this moment become? At the end of everything, after the controversy, after the pressure, after the growing demand for answers, we're left with one defining truth. This moment is bigger than just officiating. It's bigger than one player. And it's bigger than one decision. Because what's happening right now inside the WNBA is a test of how a league handles pressure, how it responds to scrutiny, and how it protects the integrity of the game while continuing to grow. At the center of it all is Caitlin Clark, not because she created the situation, but because she represents the spotlight, the attention, the new level of visibility that the league is experiencing. And that visibility changes everything. Because when more people are watching, more people are analyzing, more people are questioning, and more people expect answers. And that's the reality of growth. And that's exactly where the WNBA is right now. In a moment of rapid expansion, but also increased accountability, because you can't have one without the other. But here's the key point. Because moments like this don't just challenge a league, they define it. They reveal how strong the foundation really is. They show whether the system can handle pressure or whether it needs to evolve. And that's exactly what's happening here. Because the conversation has forced attention onto something that often stays in the background. Officiating, consistency, fairness, the elements that make competition possible, but aren't always visible until something goes wrong. And now that they're visible, they can't be ignored. They have to be addressed. But here's where things get even more important. Because this moment isn't just about fixing mistakes, it's about building trust. Trust between fans and the league. Trust between players and officials. Trust that every game is being managed with fairness and consistency. And trust isn't built overnight. It's built through action, through improvement, through showing, over time, that the system is working the way it should. Meanwhile, the narrative continues to evolve, from frustration to expectation to anticipation. Because now, people aren't just looking back at what happened, they're watching closely to see what happens next. Will the league respond clearly? Will consistency improve? Will the conversation shift back to the game itself? These are the questions shaping the next phase. And the answers will define how this moment is remembered. But here's the bigger picture. Because beyond the controversy, something important is happening. The game is growing. More fans are watching. More people are invested. More attention is being given to every detail. And while that creates challenges, it also creates opportunity. An opportunity to improve, to refine, to elevate the standard of the league as a whole. And that's what makes this moment so powerful. Because it's not just a problem, it's a turning point, a moment where the league can take everything that's being said and use it to move forward stronger than before. But that depends on one thing: response. Not just in words, but in action. Because in sports, action is what matters. Consistency is what matters. Results are what matter. And that applies to officiating just as much as it does to players. Meanwhile, Caitlin Clark continues to move forward through all of this. Playing, competing, performing under a level of attention that few players have experienced. And that in itself is part of the story. Because while the conversation surrounds her, she's still focused on the game, still making plays, still adapting to everything happening around her. And that's what makes this moment unique. Because it's not just about controversy, it's about how players perform within it. But here's the final takeaway. Because when everything is said and done, when the debate settles, when the changes, whatever they may be, take effect, this moment will be remembered for one thing: impact. The impact it had on the league, the impact it had on how officiating is viewed, the impact it had on the relationship between fans and the game, and most importantly, the impact it had on the future. Because moments like this don't just pass. They shape what comes next. They influence how the game evolves. They set new standards for what's expected moving forward. And that's exactly where we are right now. At the edge of change. At the point where pressure meets opportunity. And where the next move matters more than ever. So, what do you think about this situation? Is the officiating in the WNBA really a serious issue right now? Or is this being blown out of proportion because of the spotlight on Caitlin Clark? Drop your opinion in the comments, because this is one debate that's not going away anytime soon. If you enjoyed this breakdown, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss the biggest stories in basketball. We're covering everything, from controversy to game-changing moments and the future of the league. Share this video with your friends and let's see who really understands what's happening behind the scenes. Because in today's game, it's not just about what happens on the court, it's about what it means for the future. Hashtag Caitlin Clark, hashtag WNBA, hashtag basketball news, hashtag WNB, refs, hashtag sports debate, hashtag WNBA news, hashtag women in sports, hashtag basketball talk, hashtag viral sports, hashtag sports update at WNBA, at ESPN, at Bleacher Report, at SportsCenter, at NBA.